What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video we're going to be looking at insulin resistance, so specifically what it is, how it works, how it's going to affect you with your diet and exercise, how to know if you actually have it through correct testing, and then how you could optimize your diet and exercise to try and increase your insulin sensitivity. Just a quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, I am a personal trainer, so it's within my interest to know this because I do have a lot of clients with such conditions. However, this is not medical advice, this is for entertainment purposes only, so I will insert a disclaimer here. So insulin resistance is something that you can have on its own, and then as you get more and more insulin resistant you can go into pre-diabetes and then further on into full type 2 diabetes, which is basically just defined as full insulin resistance. And there is an increased risk of getting insulin resistance or progressing into type 2 diabetes if you are overweight or obese. So first of all, we need to look at what insulin actually is, because I feel like the information around this topic gets very misconstrued. There's lots of people saying blah 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 insulin resistance, everyone's got it, but they don't really explain what that actually is, or in a way that you can actually understand. So insulin is just a hormone, and it's essentially a chemical messenger that tells your body what to do when you eat carbohydrates. So when you eat ingested carbs, insulin deals with them. So how this works is you would eat some carbs and then they will get digested and broken down into glucose. So all carbs become glucose in the body, and glucose is what we use to make ATP or energy for movement and things like that. So all carbs become glucose, doesn't matter which one it is. It can be a veg, it can be bread, it can be cereal, it can be chocolate. They all become glucose, and then insulin is used then to deal with them. So glucose is then released into your bloodstream via the pancreas, which is where insulin is made, and this then brings your blood sugar levels up. So you eat something and you with carbs in it, and then your blood sugar levels goes up. This is fine, this is normal, this is how it works. So then what happens is your pancreas secretes some insulin to then move some of that glucose out of blood because it's not all needed in there. So how this works is, so this is your bloodstream here, and these little thingies, say for example, are bits of glucose now in your bloodstream after the digestion process. So your pancreas then secretes some insulin and puts these in here, so just draw some little eyes in here. And basically those insulin thingies pick up the glucose and take it elsewhere to where it can be stored for later. So where does it actually take it? It either takes it to your muscle cells to be stored as glycogen, or to your liver cells also to be stored as glycogen, or as a last resort it will take it to your fat cells to be stored as fat. So the more obvious ones here that's going to happen are going to be the muscle cells and the liver cells storing it, because turning sugar, which is glucose, into glycogen is pretty easy chemical change, so it's more likely to go there first. So then the only time it's realistically going to be going into fat cells is if you are in a caloric surplus, or you have been in a caloric surplus for something like more than a week, and then you're eating an unnecessary amount of carbs on top of that. So your body's like, we can't really put it in muscle and we can't put it in liver because these are full by this time after being on a surplus for a while. So then it will send it to fat cells, which is why some fat gain is inevitable on a caloric surplus diet. It's not going to go here if you're in a caloric deficit, because these are going to be depleted. So your liver and muscle glycogen is going to be depleted, so your glucose is going to be going there primarily. The only other case where it's going to go to your fat cells is if you are insulin resistant. So the reason for this is because if you are insulin resistant, it just means that your cells don't recognize the insulin coming to bring the glucose in, and so they shut the door to it. So your insulin goes here, it picks up the little glucose, and then it tries to go to your muscle cells, but your muscle cells look at it and go, I don't see you, I don't see what that is, so they don't open their little doors and they don't let the glucose come in to be stored as glycogen. And the same thing happens in your liver, so you just end up with your pancreas secreting more and more insulin, and this getting very very full of insulin, but it's not taking the glucose anywhere, so the glucose is going for its last resort option, which is to go straight to the fat cells, and this is how people tend to become more overweight if they do have insulin resistance. So the process of your cells not being able to recognize insulin is basically called the lock and key method. You may remember it from high school if you did that in high school. So the pieces don't fit together and the cells don't let the insulin holding the glucose in because they don't recognise the lock and key method, so it's the wrong key for the wrong door, that sort of thing. So basically this just means that there's more and more insulin being released and your cells are not getting what they actually want. So even though you're eating carbohydrates with this problem, you don't ever feel like you're actually full after eating them because the cells that want the carbs, such as your muscle tissues and your liver, are not getting them. So they still feel cellularly starved, but they're not actually getting the sustenance that they need, so you still feel hungry. And as a result of insulin not having anywhere to go in the bloodstream, it just sends all this extra glucose to fat cells for fat storage, because that's all it can really do. So what does this mean over time? It means that if you do have this issue and you just keep on eating more and more carbs, but you're never feeling full, and your diet's not optimized, it means you could be leaning towards gaining weight if you are in a caloric surplus. And then the weight gain can just continue and snowball on a bit to the point where you can get more and more overweight, and this can become more of a problem because it tends to be more of a problem, as we mentioned earlier, if the individual becomes more overweight. Also worth mentioning, there is a hormone called glucagon, which is also released from your pancreas, and glucagon basically does the opposite thing to what the insulin does. So the glucagon signals your liver to actually start breaking down some of that stored glycogen, and signals your muscle tissues to start breaking down some of that stored glycogen so we can use it for energy. So an example of when this would happen would be if you are in a fasted state. I don't mean just like doing intermittent fasting, I mean just like between meals and things, or if you're asleep during the night. There's no food there, so there's not going to be much there's not going to be much glucose in the blood in that situation. So your blood sugar is going to be dropping quite low, particularly when you're asleep. So what your body does to essentially keep you alive and stop your blood glucose from going too low and you passing out is to release glucagon, which is what your pancreas does, which is this one. So then that sends that in there and then goes to your liver and your muscles, breaks down glycogen stores, and that's how that process works. If you are insulin resistant, then your body's probably not going to be doing a lot of that because it's going to be in the insulin releasing state pretty much all the time if you're eating a lot of carbs and they're not going anywhere. So this in turn makes it more difficult for people with insulin sensitivity to be able to lose weight because they're not having much glucagon release, so this hormone is not signaling your body to start burning glycogen and fatty acids for energy. There's just this insulin thing going on instead, that's because your pancreas doesn't do both of these at the same time. You have to be in a different state for it to do each one. So you have to be in a fed state for it to do this one, and you have to be in a fasted state for it to do this one. So this is why people that are insulin resistant can have even more trouble when it comes to trying to lose weight. It doesn't mean that weight loss is impossible if you have insulin resistance. I've got several clients that have got insulin resistance that are doing fine on their weight loss program. It just means there needs to be a little bit more attention paid to diet and overall weight in order to get things moving a little bit more swiftly or optimally. So some of the side effects of insulin resistance are abnormal abdominal adiposity. So this is adipose tissue or fat accumulating around your central area or your stomach and in between your organs and things like that. So just on your upper half. Acne and things like getting really bad skin and large pores and increased blood pressure. So how to know if you have it? There are two tests that I would recommend going to get. I think there's one more, but the one I would recommend going to get is this one called a HbA1c test. So this test is for glucose bonded to hemoglobin in your blood. So it tests your blood sugar basically. So you want to be in this range of 5.7 or 6% or below, and the range of 5.7 to 6.4 is basically the pre-diabetes range. So if you're in there, you may have insulin resistance, and anything above 6.5% is in the diabetes state. So this is the best test to have because they test you at different points, so it's not just one singular test which could be wrong. So it's tested at several different points in time. Go back and have it done, and they'll give you a better figure across the board on where your numbers actually are. The other one you can have done is the blood sugar one, but I believe they only do it at one time, and a lot of things can affect this to make it go up or down, such as eating. So it's supposed to have it done fasted, and it's supposed to be 80 milligrams per deciliter of blood is normal. 90 to 100 per deciliter is pre-diabetes. 110 plus means you'll probably be under observation from your doctor anyway, and then 126 milligrams per deciliter is you'll be probably likely on medication or should be on medication. So what can you actually do in terms of diet and exercise, which is probably why you actually came here. So I've got some bits. I've been on PubMed, I've looked through pretty much everything that there is, and then I've looked at all the research that we have that's definite, that's in the books at the moment, and this is what I've come up with. So I've got the studies for all these. I'm going to link if you do want to go read into them more, but these are the ones that I would confidently say will do something or may do something. There's nothing on here that's going to be negatively impacting it, put it that way. So generally going for a lower carbohydrate, and then that's going to mean higher fat in turn diet, tends to be a better option. Study will be linked. This does not mean going keto. There is a study that I've read on this that said people that go keto for an extended period of time actually can worsen their insulin sensitivity, so probably not the best idea. But I do see a lot of this keto stuff thrown around with this, like keto is a cure-all for everything. No, it's not a cure for diabetes. No, it's not going to cure your insulin resistance by going keto. You don't need to do that, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend doing the low carb, slightly higher fat alternative. Obviously protein intake still needs to be important and considered, but doesn't need to be through the roof, and I don't think a very low protein diet is going to be beneficial here either. Eating fibre content of about 30 grams a day, if you're a bloke, about 25 if you're a woman, depending on calorie range. So generally it's about 10 grams per 1,000 calories, so if you're eating 3,000 calories, you'd be up here. If you're eating 2,000, you'd be right here. Combining your protein intake with fats, because protein does also spike insulin the same way that carbs do. Whey protein actually spikes insulin higher than pretty much anything out there, so you may not know that. So combining your protein with fats, if you are having them after the fasted state, would probably be beneficial. Choosing your carbs from lower GI carb sources, so that's your glycemic index score or reading. So you want to be going for the complex carbs and the fibrous carbs, which are also complex but more veggie based. Intermittent fasting, there is some research that I will link that shows people that do intermittent fasting, so they spend longer overall across the board in the fasted state, tend to improve their insulin sensitivity a little bit. So maybe not a whole huge amount, but if you've got a problem and you like intermittent fasting, then it's probably worth doing, because you can spend a little bit more time in that true fasted state than you would normally otherwise. Getting adequate sleep seems to be beneficial. If you are overweight or obese, or just generally have a higher BMI than is recommended, then losing weight via a calorie deficit. If you don't know what this is, you can either Google it or go and watch my video, which I will link up here. It's going to be your first port of call when it comes to dealing with insulin sensitivity. So all of this other stuff is nice, but it's not going to make as much difference as being a healthy weight is going to. So lose weight first, other fancy stuff next. Eating poly and mono unsaturated fats tends to have benefits, as opposed to eating trans fats, which have no benefits and are not great for you, and saturated fats, which are good in small amounts but in huge amounts can cause problems. Avoiding a high sugar diet or a lot of processed foods. This kind of speaks for itself across the board for everybody. There's no real reason to be eating a huge amount of sugar, particularly if you have this problem. It's not really going to help things. And then the last one I've got here, which I think is probably the most important one, is resistance training. So this is probably going to make, besides from the losing weight thing, this is going to be the second thing that's going to make the biggest difference overall to improving insulin sensitivity. So by resistance training, I mean going to the gym, picking up some weights, using the machines, doing free weights, something, or you can even do body weight to a point, something that's going to cause, it's going to be enough stimulus to cause a response in your muscle, which is going to mean your muscles need to grow or increase in size in order to be able to deal with this kind of stress. So it doesn't mean going to Pilates once a week, because that's not going to be enough stress, and it's not going to be enough stress over a certain period of time to make a difference to insulin sensitivity. So how does this method actually work? So we're going back to the lock and key thing here. Basically, if you increase muscle cross-sectional area, so that just means making your muscle bigger, this means you're going to be making more tissue, growing new cells, and these new cells will have brand new lock and key doors on them, which will not have insulin resistance. So basically, if we can increase the muscle mass on our body, it means there are more doors that don't lock for insulin that glucose can be shuttled into when we do eat carbs. So this means you can eat more carbs as a normal person and have better insulin sensitivity as a person with insulin resistance by adding more muscle to your frame. So how can you add more muscle to your frame? You need to go to the gym, lift weights, and then implement progressive overload over a period of time, because if you just do the same thing every week, your muscles are not going to get bigger after a certain point. It's going to cap out. So you need to be progressively overloading your body over time through more weight or more reps or more sets or more volume, something like that, to keep your muscles growing so that there's always new tissue there and there's new doors for this glucose to go through. So by doing that and adding more muscle to your frame over time, you can improve your insulin sensitivity. So what were the key takeaway points here? If you have got insulin resistance and you're looking to improve it, Make sure you're not overweight. If you are overweight, go into a caloric deficit and try and lose weight to get down to a healthy BMI range or body fat range for your height and weight. Resistance training would be highly beneficial if you have this problem. For improving your sensitivity to insulin will mean that you'll be able to eat more carbohydrate and your body will respond to carbohydrate better in the very near future and further down the line. So I hope this sheds a bit more light on the issue with insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. If you are interested in working with me, I am a qualified personal trainer and I do train quite a lot of people that do have insulin resistance and they tend to get great results on my plans. So if you are interested in looking at my services, I will drop a link in the description box below. If you learned something today or you like the video, feel free to give me a thumbs up because that really does help me out. We can spread the videos around more people and hopefully help them with their insulin problem. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.